After being ditched by my boyfriend, I turned around and found his arch-rival. When I confessed my feelings to Ryan, he looked up with a smile and said, "I won't be a rebound guy." I looked at him sincerely and asked, "Even if I truly love you, it's not possible?" Ryan fell silent. Later, he really fell for me. My ex-boyfriend screamed in frustration, "This woman keeps lying, don't be fooled by her." A kick from Ryan knocked him to the ground as he coolly said, "She loves me. How come she doesn't tell you such sweet lies?" My sister lost in another game. This was her 8th loss tonight. In the private room, everyone was excited and demanding she drink. She looked at my boyfriend Lucas for help. "Lucas, I can't drink. Can you help me one last time?" When I heard this, I had just come in from outside in the rain, carrying stomach medicine that I bought for Lucas. The teasing and jeering from the others made me freeze in the doorway. They said, "Peggy, you've already got Lucas drunk, what's your intention?" Peggy is my sister and also my dad's illegitimate daughter. Her face turned red as she stammered, "My sister is coming back, don't talk nonsense. Don't bully her." Lucas interrupted the crowd and downed his drink before affectionately rubbing Peggy's earlobe. "Satisfied now?" Peggy blushed and buried her face under the table. As Lucas started getting tipsy, he leaned in to whisper something in Peggy's ear, causing her to gasp in surprise and blush even more. Lucas shook his head in exasperation. His friend handed over a room key. "Lucas, are you taking Peggy upstairs tonight?" Lucas hesitated, his voice carrying a hint of coldness. "I've resisted touching her for so many years, why tonight? Trying to make me break my vow?" His friend looked panicked. "Then what?" Lucas snapped, "Call Rachel." Rachel is me, a docile and obedient girlfriend in Lucas's eyes. His friends joked, "Are you playing with Rachel? If you don't marry her but ask her to sleep with you, will she agree?" Lucas let out a light scornful laugh. "This woman is so nervous talking to men, who else does she dare find besides me?" But he didn't know that at that moment, by the door, there was only a box of flattened stomach medicine. And his business rival, who was just talking to him, was now cornered by me in the adjacent corner. "Ryan, I like you. I want to be with you forever." Ryan, dressed elegantly, with deep-set eyes reflecting my soaked self. With his warm voice cutting through the night, he replied, "Sorry, I don't play second fiddle. Especially not to the fiancé of my arch-enemy." I clutched my wet hair and looked at him with genuine eyes. "Can't I be with you even if I truly love you?" His smile faded gradually as minutes passed, and eventually, I found myself sitting in Ryan's black Bentley. I was draped in his coat. At that moment, I received a text from Lucas on my phone. "Room 502, come now." I quickly replied and turned off my phone. In the private room, Lucas lazily raised his eyes and asked, "What did she say?" His friend nervously replied after a long silence, "Lucas, your wife, she called you a fool." In fact, I wanted to call him a fool a long time ago. But my aunt wouldn't allow it. She said since my mom passed away and Peggy's mom came in, I was the least favored daughter in the family. Destined to be the sacrificial lamb for a wealthy old man's family alliance. So I took the initiative. During my dad's birthday banquet, I quietly told a dozen young men, "I like you." Only Lucas believed me. And so, he became my boyfriend and then my fiancé. As the night fell, today I was supposed to be with Lucas at this vacation resort hundreds of miles away from home. But it seemed returning home was not an option now. The car sped into the resort in the night, and eventually, Ryan led me to a hotel suite, and I snapped back to reality. Play this game of thrill? Standing at the door, feeling a bit awkward, Ryan calmly said, "The room inside is yours. Do as you please." It seemed like he had no such intentions. After settling me in, he went to the next room for a meeting. In the quiet of the night, as I stared blankly at the night outside, trying to figure out my next move, Lucas's call came through. His tone was cold and aloof. "Rachel, did you dare to scold me?" Suddenly, a sobbing, unclear voice of Peggy came from the other end. Don't let my sister hear. She missed her chance, how dare she blame you? Here, talk to your sister." Peggy's voice, with sobbing and panting, soon reached me. "Sister, I'm sorry. Can you cancel the engagement with Lucas? He's mine now." Seeing me not speaking, and Peggy's crying getting louder, it seemed she wanted to provoke me. Lucas chuckled and said, "Being jealous already, Rachel?" Learn from your sister. Who would want you besides me? Fool! Finished scolding me, he hung up quickly, taking a sip of wine to boost his courage. A few minutes later, wrapped in a bathrobe, I pushed open the door to the room next door. The light from inside spilled out. Ryan hadn't slept yet and was sitting elegantly in a suit at the desk. As I got closer, his gaze silently swept over me. Through my fair collarbones, an ankle adorned with a red bow, leaving a strange sensation of warmth. Rachel, what's up? His gentle tone made me nervous. Thinking of my uncertain fate ahead, I nervously undid my belt, feeling like a pervert with exhibitionist tendencies. But I had to do this to avoid marrying the old man. I mustered up the courage silently in my heart. The room fell silent, and as I struggled with the stubbornly knotted bathrobe, Ryan's gaze warmed. Sweating profusely, unable to undo it, I finally gave in and sprinted into his arms. Feigning weakness, I said, "Ryan, I'm scared to sleep alone." Meeting his meaningful gaze, my face blushed instantly. I had forgotten Ryan's strict upbringing and his pristine reputation. This innocent gesture in his eyes was nothing short of a betrayal. The wall clock in the corner ticked away as Ryan chuckled, "Are you looking to sleep with me, Rachel?" My face blushed like bleeding, clutching his cold fingertips, my eyes earnest. "Can I?" "I'm very sincere." Ryan seemed pensive. If someone did something inappropriate to me, they should indeed take responsibility. I worked my not-so-bright mind, slowly unbuttoning his shirt. Would this be considered inappropriate? Not quite. Thinking for a moment, I decided to sit in his lap and lightly kissed his lips, asking, "How about this?" Ryan's gaze softened. "Okay, I'm yours now." I couldn't believe it. I just kissed Ryan, and he agreed to marry me and immediately left for the office. Before leaving, he handed me a card, sharing the address of his villa for me to arrange on my own. Standing at the door holding the certificate, I hadn't fully processed it yet. The next moment, Lucas's call came through. "It's been one night, had enough fun? Come have lunch with me." That's when I remembered Lucas and the others were still at a vacation resort 100 kilometers away. "I'm married now, don't bother me." The silence on the other end seemed to have heard a joke. "Rachel, are you joking with me? Just because I haven't contacted you the whole night?" Before he could say more, I impatiently hung up. After a while, Lucas sent me a message, "You won't regret it." A few days later, as I was shopping in the mall, I suddenly received a call from my father. "Come back, I have something to say." Taking a cab back home, I was greeted by a house full of guests. Peggy stood in the center of the hall like a beautiful princess. My father loudly announced, "My daughter Peggy will soon be married to Lucas. Thank you all for your blessings." It dawned on me what my father intended. When Lucas and I got engaged, it was just a simple dinner with both families. No one in our circle knew that Lucas's fiancée changed overnight from an older sister to a younger sister. My father wanted to throw a grand engagement party for his illegitimate daughter. I was in a mess, then dragged to a corner by someone. "Where were you last night?" Lucas asked, with an intense glimpse on his face, making me flare up in anger. "What's it to you?" Lucas leaned in, looking at me with a sudden grip on my hair. "What's wrong, mad now? Did you enjoy scolding me last night?" Peggy rushed over. "Lucas, don't, we're engaged, my sister is already sad enough." Lucas's eyes showed impatience. "You, jealous of Peggy? Are you even worthy to compare yourself to Peggy?" Peggy looked pleased. "If I didn't make my intentions clear earlier, my sister would have been in unrequited love with you for so long. Go ahead, scold us." The consecutive foolish remarks made me angry. I pushed him away. "You compare me with your illegitimate daughter?" "I'm not speaking softly." The room fell silent. Peggy turned pale suddenly and said hesitantly, "Sister, why did you scold me as an illegitimate daughter? Isn't that what you asked me to do?" The guests looked at me. "Is Rachel not angry? She seems to be shaking." Soft as cotton, what temper could she have? My father probably couldn't bear the embarrassment, immediately coldly commanded, "Mom died, has your upbringing disappeared too? Apologize to your sister." The tight string in my mind finally broke. "You old bastard." Suddenly, my angry roar echoed in the hall. The next second, splat. A large piece of cake smashed fiercely onto my father's face. "Didn't you want to have an engagement banquet? If you don't give me face, then forget about it all." The hall fell into a dead silence. Peggy, incredulous, looked up. Rachel. So I also rewarded her with a piece of cake. The scene suddenly turned chaotic. For the next 10 minutes, I cut Peggy's dress with scissors, pushed over her 7-tier engagement cake, and spilled precious wine all over the floor. The guests exclaimed in shock, scrambling to disperse. Peggy looked extremely embarrassed, crying like a weak little kitten. Lucas, please save me, my sister has gone crazy. I pressed Peggy down in the midst of the mess. With a click, I cut off her hair. The next moment, I felt a tightening on my scalp as someone dragged me up by my hair. Lucas' icy voice resounded, Rachel, have you gone mad enough yet? Apologize to your sister. I was furious. You despicable man and woman, I wish you 100 years of happiness. Lucas forcefully pushed me against the wall. Is that so? Then let Peggy sort it out herself. Peggy with her messy short hair struggled to get up from the ground and was about to slap me. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupted, Peggy, before you act, I suggest you think about the consequences. A simple sentence easily froze the room. Ryan, who was supposed to be on a plane, appeared in the villa at that moment. My father's face immediately changed. Ryan, how did you come here? Lucas sneered, Ryan, mind your own business. When it comes to my dog, I can do whatever I want to. Is that so? Ryan walked over casually, picked up a bottle of wine, and smashed it on Lucas' head without blinking an eye. The red wine splattered all over his head. So, can I not like your dog and hit it too? Lucas, bewildered, cursed in frustration, are you crazy? All the collaborations are taken away by you, why are you hitting me? Ignoring Lucas, Ryan's gaze moved on to my father. Do the teachings of the Sioux family allow men to hit women? My father smirked, this is our family matter. Ryan found the only pure place in the hall, gracefully took a seat. All right, family matter, then let the two of them solve it themselves. Rachel, you may continue. My father, suppressing his anger, spoke frankly, Ryan, what does this have to do with you? What authority do you have to interfere in this matter? With a gentle gaze, Ryan said, I am Rachel's husband. Do you think this identity is enough to intervene? The room fell into a dead silence. My father's face twitched. What are you talking about? I wiped the cream off my head, raised my chin, and looked at him. Dad, we got married. Lucas suddenly raised his head, his face turned ashen. Ryan, she's my fiancée. You are the third party. Ryan smiled lightly. Lucas, you have a fiancé. But who are you getting engaged to today? Besides, both she and I have marriage certificates. Compared to me, you seem to be the one abandoned. After a brief shock, my father quickly tried to smooth things over. It's all a misunderstanding. Today is Peggy and Lucas's engagement banquet, and Ryan's unexpected visit adds great honor to us. I began to doubt if my father's mind was broken. How could he say such insane things? The atmosphere was still as dead as silence. Peggy, fearing that I would continue to beat her, cried and clung to Lucas. Lucas, my hair has been cut like this, I can't face anyone anymore. As Peggy continued to be distressed about her hair all the way until the evening, my father was eager to have Lucas and Ryan stay overnight, not caring about her emotions. After dinner, I led Ryan back to the room. My room was next to Peggy's, but much smaller. It was Peggy and her mother who forced me to move into this room. I pulled Ryan into the room. You don't have to stay, it would be better to go home. He held my face gently, checking to see if I was hurt before saying, we are married, it is proper to meet your parents. I just didn't expect it to be in these circumstances. Feeling disillusioned, I said, your family probably won't approve of me. Taking their son off to get married and their original family looking like this. Ryan smiled, as long as there is true love, they will understand. Even if my intention for marrying him wasn't pure. If he finds out, will he regret it? Late into the night, after taking a shower, I crawled into my little bed. Seeing that Ryan was still sitting motionless next to the bed, I warmly lifted the covers. Come lie down. He hesitated and averted his gaze. No need, I'm not sleepy. I wanted to say something more, but suddenly the sound of embarrassment came from the next room. Peggy, you're not planning to sleep tonight, right? Lucas' voice sounded more frustrated. Peggy, flirtatious, hummed, I'm going to make her regret it. The atmosphere became awkward. The room was dimly lit, and Ryan sat in the shadows, his expression impossible to read. Rachel? He suddenly called my name, the simple name containing a hint of ambiguity. What? I asked, feeling a slight tremor. What do you want to compete in? His meaningful gaze made me blush, or maybe we forget about it. As I was in the midst of hot and heavy passion, I finally couldn't bear it anymore. I flung open the covers, grabbed Ryan by his tie. Let's compete. Ryan got up in a second, sure. After that statement, he wrapped his hands around my neck, lowered his head, and kissed me. His light fragrance engulfed me. I lost my mind instantly, hugging him dizzily. Ryan's body was warm, making me shiver with heat. Distracted, I rambled, You have to be careful. We don't have to win at all costs. I don't want to push you too far. Is that okay? In the darkness, Ryan let out a light laugh. Should I use half the strength then? I agreed, that sounds good. I didn't push him to exhaustion. He's the one who almost exhausted me. As time passed, Peggy became visibly anxious. Lucas, get up. Don't pretend to be dead. I was still in the middle of that intense moment, struggling to crawl forward. Can you let me rest? They're not making any noise. Ryan pulled me back. We're not even halfway there. How much longer? Probably until dawn. The result of not giving up was that I slept until 10 o'clock the next day. When I woke up, the room was quiet. I sluggishly put on my slippers and opened the door. The sunlight filled the downstairs living room. Sitting at the tea table were my father and his two sons-in-law. Although the atmosphere should have been harmonious, it seemed somewhat tense. Yesterday was all a misunderstanding. The day after tomorrow, I want to invite the guests back to avoid any misunderstandings. Ryan sipped his tea leisurely. I have no objections. It just so happens that my parents want to visit the day after tomorrow to discuss the wedding arrangements for Rachel and me. My father's face lit up with a smile. All right. What about on Lucas' side? Lucas's face darkened. Peggy and I will pick a date separately to meet them, not together. Peggy, who had come out at some point, didn't look too good. Seeing me looking at her, she began to desperately explain. Lucas said I was too tired, asked me to rest for a few more days before meeting the parents. Don't get any ideas. Nonsense. I said seriously, you clearly fell asleep early last night, you weren't tired at all. Peggy turned pale. Rachel, do you think you can hide your dirty deeds? I rolled my eyes. Mind your own business. Blinking, the day when Ryan's parents visited arrived. Peggy was acting strange today, calling Lucas over early in the morning. She had changed from the gloom of the past few days and was smilingly saying, Today, sister must get in the right spirit. After all, there's a tough battle ahead. With a smile on my face, I took in all her provocations. Once today was over, I would force my father to give up all of our property. Then kick Peggy and her mother out. After waiting so many years, this wish is finally about to come true. I was itching to sing out loud on the spot. At 11 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Peggy ran to open the door first. Ryan didn't come, but many familiar faces did. Seeing these people, my smile froze on my lips. A few people walked into the door in an orderly fashion, offering me a casual greeting. Rachel, how have you been? Last time we met, you confessed to me, and then you got married to Ryan in the blink of an eye. It's interesting, your confession to me was on the same day as to them. Ryan must know about this, right? Probably not, otherwise he wouldn't let her in. My heart skipped a beat, and I slowly tightened my hand. Lucas sensed that something was wrong, furrowed his brows. What are you guys talking about? Peggy chuckled. You don't know yet, do you? On the day Rachel confessed to you, she also said the same thing to them, only you believed it. I felt my heart sink as the atmosphere in the room changed. The shadows deepened, and the tension rose. The air was charged with unspoken accusations and hidden truths, all waiting to be revealed. She suddenly covered her mouth, as if just realizing she had said something wrong. Lucas's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Rachel, is what they said true? I pursed my lips and said nothing. Obviously, this secret couldn't be kept any longer. Lucas realized he had been played and his face turned purple. All right, Rachel, you're doing fine. When Ryan kicks you out, I will settle the score with you properly. I had been holding back my temper for a long time, but it finally exploded. I coldly countered, what did I do wrong? Confessing to 8 men is illegal? Then go ahead and call the police. Lucas's expression was blank. What about me? My dad is going to marry me off to a 70-year-old man the next day. What choice did I have? I didn't cheat on anyone. You willingly fell for it, willingly let yourself be used by me, and it's my fault? You cheated on Peggy, I found someone else, and we owe each other nothing. Lucas chuckled bitterly. Rachel, listen to what you're saying. How can you be so unapologetic? Peggy spoke softly. So, according to your sister, you're just using Ryan too? I felt a sharp pang, clenched my fists, and began to vent. None of your business. I pursue men with my own abilities. I want to live a good life. What's wrong with that? I knew today's events would reach Ryan sooner or later. I have always been this kind of person. Selfish, opportunistic, unfeeling. Born to always have to scheme for myself. Even if Ryan and I are completely done, the worst that can happen is marrying a 70-year-old man and starting over. Peggy smiled faintly and let me pass through the doorway. It was only then I saw that Ryan had already entered the room at some point. A sense of embarrassment enveloped me. I looked into his eyes. They were devoid of the usual gentle smile. Peggy sighed regretfully. It seems Ryan's parents have left, such a shame for coming all this way for nothing. Ryan didn't approach me or even look at the group of men beside me. Instead, he stared at me and said, "Rachel, I hope you can give me an explanation." I had never imagined that Ryan would see such a ghastly and ugly side of me. My aunt always said, "You've lost your mother, you have to learn to look out for yourself. Don't reflect on yourself too much, blame others more, that's how you can live well, carefree." For so many years, I had been telling myself this. I'm not wrong. It's others who are. But now, facing Ryan, I found myself unable to speak. I turned my head away, tears pooling in my eyes, unable to explain. Peggy, not one to let things be, intervened. "What's there to explain, Ryan? She's just using you as a stepping stone. Even her tears are fake." Ryan ignored her attempt at explanation. "If you can't explain, then explain at home." Lucas stared incredulously. "Ryan, after all this, you're still giving her a chance?" I wiped away my tears and walked over to him without a word, grabbing his sleeve. Peggy anxiously stepped forward. "Ryan, my sister's intentions are impure." "So what?" Ryan coldly retorted, "This is my family matter. Are you getting too involved?" It was the first time he had spoken with such a tone, showing the depth of his frustration. Peggy was taken aback and silently withdrew her hand. Ryan took me and left. The atmosphere in the car was heavy, and even the driver didn't dare to breathe loudly. Ryan looked out the window, not saying a word to me. I knew he was angry. I hung my head low in silence. Ryan finally spoke in a cold tone. "Can't you even come up with a convincing lie now? Can't you even comfort someone?" I quietly grabbed his sleeve. "Please don't be angry, I do like you." Ryan didn't respond. I began to ramble. "I admit that initially it was because of your family background, but after being together for so long, I really have fallen for you." "Rachel," Ryan reminded calmly, "we've only been married for 3 days." I faltered, carefully holding his hand. "Then I'll start liking you now, is that okay?" Ryan shut his eyes in annoyance. When we arrived home, I belatedly realized that he had brought me back to his private residence. Seeing the decorations inside, which clearly had been recently renovated and added with some women's items, I felt even more despondent. "It's late, let's sleep first," Ryan said as he removed his tie. I hugged him suddenly. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" "I'm scared to sleep alone." Ryan coldly replied, "Do you want to explain now?" I hesitated. "Can I write you a letter instead?" Ryan took a deep breath. "Why write a letter if you have a mouth to talk with? Things are a bit complicated, afraid you'll get angry before hearing me out and ask for a divorce." He smirked. "That would be nice. I hope, Rachel, you can give it to me before I'm buried." With that, he closed the bedroom door in front of me. I hated the idea of sleeping alone the most. Especially now that I had gotten used to Ryan's presence, I couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, I got up to write him a letter. Poured my heart out in 3,000 words, which took me several days to write. I finally sent it to my aunt. "Aunt, can you take a look and see if there is anything that needs to be changed?" I was very anxious. Half an hour later, she replied, "Is this a confession from a criminal?" "What? Is Ryan a cop?" I had done so much wrong, I didn't want to hide it from him. "Remove the part about cutting Peggy's mother's hair, it's not appropriate." After my aunt made the edits, I called Ryan's secretary. The secretary hesitated. "The boss is angry and doesn't want me to tell you he's at 18 River Road." That evening, as Ryan and his business partners were leaving, I was trying to hide behind a garbage can. The street lamp cast a long shadow of me sticking my butt out. Just as they approached, the conversation paused. "Ryan, have you attracted some trouble lately? She seems to be following you. Could it be that woman who fooled you?" Ryan's indifferent gaze swept over the shadow of my exposed head, then nodded. "Sorry, excuse me." He quickly walked towards me. The light suddenly dimmed as he stood in front of me, blocking out the surroundings. Ryan stood before me and asked, "What's the matter?" I nervously pulled out a wrinkled letter from my coat. "I finished it, could you read it now?" A wide jacket covered my head, pulling me in. Ryan calmly said, "Get in the car." I was led into the car in front of everyone. The car stopped at the side of the road, warm air blowing intoxicatingly. Ryan turned on the overhead light and unfolded the letter. He read it slowly from start to finish. I nervously clenched my hands, stealing glances at his expression. He seemed to be reading it word by word. Anxiously, I said, "I have a bad temper, I'm crafty, quick to anger. If you want a divorce, I can understand." Seeing the troubled look on my face, Ryan couldn't help but smile faintly. "How can you be so sure I don't like all that?" My mind went blank, my eyes fixed on him. Ryan pinched my cheek and said, "What bothers me is that you don't want to explain to me. Aunt once said I have to pretend well. Because of my nature, I am not likable." Seeing my embarrassed face, Ryan finally chuckled. "Last year when Lucas's car broke down and missed the contract signing, the time I took it from him, was it because of you? You were the one who blocked his exhaust pipe." Feeling uneasy, I turned my head away. He called me a disliked bastard. Ryan smiled faintly. "You're not." "He is." I buried my head in his chest, and tears streamed down my face. "Do you not dislike me?" His clothes were in disarray from my hug. Ryan chuckled. "I don't. But if it falls into your hands, things might get worse." Peggy waited for several days, didn't hear any news of our divorce, and couldn't sit still. She dared to taunt me in a message, "Sister, no matter what you do, I've married Lucas." She sent a photo of herself wearing a red dress, with a green jade bracelet on her wrist that I instantly recognized as my late mother's heirloom. In the past few days, my father had secretly arranged an engagement banquet for Peggy, even giving her my mother's invaluable bracelet. He had invited many guests to witness Peggy's engagement. Afraid that I'd continue causing trouble, he kept the news under wraps. Unfortunately, Peggy's joy went too far. Before the engagement banquet could finish, she hurried to send a provoking message. So that afternoon, in front of everyone, I burst into the engagement banquet uproariously. The festive atmosphere came to an abrupt halt. My father's face turned pale. Peggy's friends gossiped nervously. "Peggy, isn't that your sister? The one who covets your fiancé? How shameless." I lip-streamed it for all to see. I was determined not to let her get away with this. Peggy's mother stood up immediately. "What are you doing here? This family doesn't welcome you." I brushed her aside and questioned my father expressionlessly. "Why did you give Peggy my mother's bracelet?" A hint of guilt flashed across my father's face. Peggy's mother spoke up. "What about your mother's thing? It's our daughter's family heirloom. What's wrong with me giving it to your sister? That was given to me by my mother. What right does a homewrecker like you have to possess it?" Peggy's mother turned red and retorted, "You're talking nonsense." I sneered. "My mother kept evidence back then. Do you want me to show it to everyone?" The expressions on the faces of the crowd changed drastically. My dad slammed the table and exclaimed, "What are you doing? Stop causing trouble and go back." Lucas's mom's face turned pale. "What do you mean? Who is the third party?" I sneered. "Auntie, don't you know? Peggy's mom is the third party who rose in position, and Peggy took Lucas away from me. They are both despicable. That's enough. Get out." My dad's face turned white with anger. Lucas's mom tentatively asked, "The dowry you mentioned earlier, isn't it from Rachel's mom? I have never heard about it over these years." "My mom has a dowry?" I stared at my dad. "What dowry?" My dad stared back at me. "That's called inheritance. It belongs to me and your mom as joint property. You'll get a small share at most." "I want to take it all." My dad was furious. "Rachel, why are you shouting so loudly?" Peggy wiped her tears and revealed a jade bracelet on her wrist. "Sister, you already have everything. Why do you have to vie with me?" Angered by her words, I disregarded Peggy's cries of pain and forcibly took the bracelet off her wrist. "This belongs to me too." Peggy cried and called for the security to escort me out. Lucas's mom's expression turned grim. She announced the engagement in public before adjourning the meeting. Sternly looking at Lucas, she said, "Lucas, come back with me." Lucas hesitated. "Mom." His mom slapped Lucas across the face. "Useless thing, go home." Peggy completely broke down, screaming in front of everyone, "Rachel, what will make you satisfied? I have nothing left. This family, you will not take a penny. I fell silent. After a while, I called Ryan in front of everyone. Rachel, what's wrong? I endured my grievances and said, they want to take my mom's inheritance. Understood, pass the phone to your dad. I put it on speakerphone and pushed it towards my dad. Ryan's gentle voice came through the line, if you don't agree to Rachel's terms, the business deal we have next month will be off. My dad's expression changed, Ryan, you can't always protect her. If I don't protect her, then who will protect you? Ryan chuckled, you still have your charm, but I'm not interested. You can try other men. My dad turned pale with rage and eventually collapsed to the ground, unconscious. My dad fell ill and was hospitalized. The day after the incident, it was all over the internet. The video, maliciously edited, caused a backlash from netizens. Unfilial daughter. The oldest daughter disowns her relatives over a family inheritance, causing her father to be hospitalized out of anger. That woman is the former stepmother and her daughter, not the third party. They say being a stepmother is tough, but I really didn't want to deal with my ex-wife's children. Peggy sat in front of the camera, her eyes red, listing all the things I had done to her over the years. My sister secretly throws away my breakfast, snatches my birthday gifts from mom, sticks chewing gum in my hair. She always thought I stole dad's love from her. My mom and I owe her, but she's just naturally wicked. Our family doesn't welcome her. The comments below were filled with sighs. Oh, what a misfortune to have such a sister. Probably sided with the ex-wife, not having a good conscience. Poor stepmother and her child. My dad stayed in the intensive care unit, while Peggy and her mom entertained various interviews every day. They tried to turn public opinion against me. Ryan asked if I needed his assistance. In the end, my aunt, who is abroad, returned to the country on the third day. She took over my phone call and told Ryan, I'll handle it. With that, the villa fell silent. Peggy and her mom sat opposite, trying to maintain an appearance of a hostess. What do you want? My aunt tossed her sunglasses, crossed her legs, and pulled out a document. Your husband is ill. I've met with the company's shareholders. We all agree that Rachel will temporarily manage the affairs of the company. Peggy's mom was livid. On what basis? Just because our family holds half of the company's shares. My aunt didn't even look at her. Based on what Rachel has learned since childhood, it's time for her to gain experience in the company. I see you are doing well with the media interviews, keep up the good work, and strive to start live streaming soon. After that, she presented a contract. Rachel, feel free to complain. Sign the contract, I'll buy you hot searches, and 2 months later we'll start live streaming and I'll take 90% of the profit. I was astonished. Aunt? She gently patted my head, dear, you are the one to take over the company. As long as you stay within the law, no one can stop you. Peggy completely broke down, I'll make sure she loses everything. My aunt smiled faintly, fool. With that, she led me out of that house. The warm sunlight shone on me, and I felt warm all over. Patting my shoulder, my aunt asked, Rachel, what's next? I pondered for a moment, let her continue to curse at me. And then? Create public opinion, collaborate with journalists for follow-ups, expose Peggy's illegitimate daughter's background, reverse my reputation, then announce that I will take over the company and watch the stock price rise. My aunt laughed, okay, I didn't teach you in vain. I was a bit melancholic, Aunt, this is my first time entering the company. What if they don't accept me? My aunt glanced at me, do what you're good at, use some dirty tricks, and take them down. Recently, the company's shareholders have been calling me a debt collector. Those who sided with my dad had their backgrounds turned upside down. Nearly stripped of everything. Peggy's side kept cursing me with full force. The trending topics stayed on the internet for days. I found it not enough, and secretly bought more. Peggy called me, Rachel, admit your mistake, and I'll spare you. A few days later, I released the chat records between my dad and Peggy's mom. I directly tagged Peggy. Illegitimate daughter turned princess, having fun? The public was stirred. She was the stepmother, wasn't she? Really a third party? The tables have turned. Rachel's classmates mentioned how Peggy used to insult Rachel as illegitimate. And that Lucas, who was supposed to get engaged to Rachel, ended up with Peggy. Mother and daughter have no decency. Peggy's situation was a secret that people knew but silently acknowledged in the industry. It didn't matter much until it was blown up online. Now, the matter became the talk of the town, and Lucas's family immediately called off the engagement. Peggy was dumbfounded. She couldn't understand why so much evidence suddenly appeared. nor the various biased comments. This was the first lesson my aunt taught me: public opinion is manipulable. My dad, who had finally recovered his health, fell ill again due to anger. My aunt said, "Show more filial piety to your dad, maybe if he's further provoked, I can be relieved." I knew my dad didn't like me, but he couldn't figure out another way. Peggy and her mom were no help, and trusting them with the company would likely suffocate my dad. Lucas kept coming around me these days. This day, he had just entered my office, and Peggy arrived shortly after, leading her little sister, berating me loudly. "Sister, you're married now, why are you flirting with my boyfriend? Have some shame? You've always bullied Peggy since she was little," apologized to her quickly. The familiar camera was once again present. They were provoking a public battle. Lucas sat in a corner, not saying a word, becoming invisible. I was full of anger, grabbed Peggy by her hair, dragging her in front of Lucas. "Come on, hit him. Why would I hit him? I need to hit you." I laughed. "Your man can't control his legs," and runs towards me. "If you don't hit him, do you want to hit me? Bullies are cowards." Peggy raised her chin, wanting to accuse me of something. I slapped her across the face, threateningly saying, "Hit him. If you don't hit him, I'll hit you." Peggy was dumbfounded and turned to my dad to report me. Lucas sat unmoved. "Rachel, I've endured you for so many years without retaliating, you should understand." "I understand. If you won't stand up, then leave." After that, I had the security escort Lucas out as well. Ryan was busy with work recently, and Lucas's company was steadily crumbling under his pressure, showing signs of decline. I was glad to not see him much lately. The green plant he had gifted me was nearly bald from being plucked. In the evening, Ryan called. I picked up, but stayed silent. He chuckled. "Angry again?" Looking at my gloomy reflection in the mirror, I put on a bunny hat and dressed up. I was going to see my dad. He had called in, sobbing on the phone about missing me and having an item of my mom's inheritance to give me. Ryan chuckled. "I'll be there in half an hour to pick you up." I felt a surge of emotion. "You're back?" I suddenly felt much better. I grabbed a camera on my way, planning to take a few pictures of my dad paralyzed to cheer up my mom. As the night fell, the villa had few lights on. It was dim. Everything was eerily quiet. Just as I stepped through the gate, I stopped in my tracks. My dad's room wasn't lit. Realizing something was amiss, I was about to retreat. Someone suddenly covered my mouth, dragged me back into the villa. The familiar scent of perfume reached me. I didn't need to look, I knew it was Lucas. Peggy's voice came. "Put in some effort, I've set up the camera here." Before I could react, there was a tearing sound. My skirt was torn apart. I felt a chill run through me. Lucas smirked maliciously and said, "Smack your face, it would be best to record her looking like this and show it to my brothers." The blinding light shone on my face. Lucas twisted my chin, saying, "Without Ryan around, who do you have left to rely on? Be a good girl and take off your clothes, or else I'll release your video." Struggling against the blinding light, I was solidly slapped by Peggy. Peggy chuckled. "Rachel, give me your shares, and I'll help you." Suddenly, I understood my dad's intention in making that phone call. He had conspired with them to teach me a lesson and to claw out some shares for me to give to Peggy. He had been shrewd his whole life. Now paralyzed in bed, unable to rely on his old connections, he had to take risks and play dirty. He firmly believed that Ryan's family cared about their reputation, so I dared not expose this matter. Clearly in a good mood, Lucas threatened, "Don't think because you're married to Ryan, I won't do anything to you. Once the video is out, do you think he'll still want you?" Sweating profusely, I tried to reason. "Let's talk things out, release me, and I will sign the share transfer agreement with you." Spitefully, Peggy said, "Should have done this earlier." A pen was thrust into my hand. "Sign it," she ordered. Trembling, I let the pen drop onto the paper, then raised my head, eyes eagerly watching the camera. It was still recording, right? Impatiently, Lucas confirmed, "It's recording, so don't try any tricks." In the next moment, I kicked Lucas in the crotch. His piercing scream echoed through the room. In the next moment, with Peggy's horrified eyes watching, I fiercely jabbed the pen towards him. When Ryan rushed in, I was pressing Peggy into the toilet. "Rachel," he saw me battered and bruised, took off his jacket, and covered me from head to toe. "Okay, let go, Rachel, you have wounds on your hands." Peggy cried and retched, disgusted and repulsed. Not far away, Lucas crumpled on the floor, eyes lifeless, face drained of color. Embedded in the wooden floor was a pen deeply impaled. He murmured, "Call an ambulance." I struggled against Ryan's restraint. Lucas, you son of a… Ryan held me tightly, gently arranging my hair, his voice eerily calm. It's okay, let me handle this. His hands trembled slightly. A great effort needed to press me against his chest. Leaning into his embrace, tears streamed down my face. I want to cut ties with my dad. I want to call the police. I want them all locked up. My elbow was bleeding, my knees scraped raw. My hair had been torn out in clumps, looking disheveled. Ryan took my arm and led me to the door. As we passed by Lucas, he suddenly kicked him in the stomach. Slowly, then firmly stepped on his face. Lucas, do you want to die? Lucas, bloodied and defeated, mumbled, I posted her naked video. You've brought disgrace upon yourself. What's wrong with being naked? I said calmly, whoever wants to see the skin, let them see it. Dare to spread rumors about me, and I will sue him, one by one, send them all to keep you company. Lucas's eyes showed resentment. You two scoundrels. A glance from Ryan, and someone stuffed a rag in his mouth. Wait for the police to… I linked my arm with his and walked out the door. My dad sat in a wheelchair, and seeing me unharmed, he was stunned. How? I walked past him without a glance, then suddenly turned back and kicked his wheelchair over. The news spread like wildfire online. Early in the morning, a horde of reporters crowded outside the Sue family's house, making it impassable. Regarding your second daughter and an outsider bullying your eldest daughter, are you aware of this? My dad averted his gaze. I was not aware. Peggy's mother looked at him in disbelief, crying hysterically, how could you not be aware? You said to kick that little wench out of the house. What nonsense are you talking? From a distance, Lucas's mother got out of the car and went straight to Peggy's mother, slapping her. Princess? What kind of princess flirts with her sister's fiancé? The media raised their cameras eagerly. Peggy's mother retorted, it was your son cheating. What right do you have to speak of me? My dad tried to smooth things over, but ended up ridiculed and scorned. See, when he had money. Everyone put on a pretense. Now that he's lost money and power, dignity gone, face is worthless. People mocked, open your eyes, the one who conspired with his daughters to spread the eldest daughter's private photos. Such cruelty? With a stepmother, comes a stepfather. Lucas was no good either. Supposedly their company was facing constant losses until my father offered him some benefits to come. This type of company is something to stay clear of. At the same time, my house was also besieged. Reporters crowded around Ryan. Ryan, how do you view your wife overturning her father's wheelchair? Ryan calmly replied, disrespect begets disrespect. You reap what you sow. Is your wife emotionally unstable? Ryan nonchalantly brushed my head. It's fine, she has her moments. As long as you don't provoke her, there won't be any danger. But if you sensationalize things, there will be consequences. Sparse laughter echoed around. Due to the media's reports, I was once again incensed. Half a month later, I formally took over the company. The stock prices rose. Everything was proceeding smoothly according to plan. Ryan and my wedding was set 3 months later. He took me to meet his parents. Allegedly, the first time his parents visited, without even entering the house, my astounding words shocked them. His mother wanted to go in, but Ryan advised against it, saying the timing wasn't right. When Ryan's mother first saw me, she cautiously asked, what if dishes are served that she doesn't like, will she flip the table? He smiled and replied, Mom, it's not that serious. Conversely, his parents got along well with me. I almost became the quietest person in their house. Ryan's mother asked nervously, Rachel, why aren't you talking? After a moment of thought, I replied, I'm used to it, no one listened to me at home before. Ryan's mother burst into tears. Later, an array of random snacks were presented before me. Rachel, come, Mom bought you candy. Try it. Ryan's father sat nearby reading the newspaper, chuckling, childish stuff to please kids. The two of them surrounded me, watching as I ate snacks all afternoon. When Ryan returned home, his mother was engrossed in conversation with me. Approaching us, he lifted me from the chair, patted my rounded belly, and said, Mom, stop feeding her, we have to leave. Isn't it time for our honeymoon? Rachel is fine by my side. Snapping his fingers, Ryan led me to the airport. At the departure lounge's display screen, I saw the news of Lucas and Peggy being sent to prison. Peggy's mother called, Rachel, it's only you in our family now, your father is partially paralyzed, what should I do? I recalled how back then, my mother lay in the hospital bed and made numerous calls to my father. Peggy's mother answered the last call, mocking my dying mother for burdening others. Hearing the crying on the other end of the call again, I said, give the phone to my dad. My dad's mumbled voice came through, seemingly calling my name. I asked seriously, Dad, Do you not have a conscience? When you chose to cheat back then, you should have foreseen this day. A real man shouldn't regret. Finished speaking, amidst my father's unwilling cries, I hung up the phone. That night, I found myself on a beach thousands of kilometers away. The bright moon hung high, the sea wind blowing. I bit down on a straw, lost in thought. Ryan pinched my cheek. Rachel, what are you thinking about? How did you come to like me? Frowning, I hesitated. You never told me sweet words. Ryan's eyes twinkled. Want to hear them? I enthusiastically jumped up. He pressed my forehead, his voice gentle yet resigned. Stop jumping around like a little puppy, don't be erratic. The sound of the wind gradually quieted. Ryan spoke softly. My mom, she and your mom were best friends. But because your mom was too infatuated, she cut ties with her. This news was hard to digest. Ryan added, before your mother passed away. She entrusted me to take care of you. Your wild aunt, fearing I would turn you into a wastrel, forbade me from intervening. I was even more stunned. So for all these years, he had been silently watching over me. Originally, I could have become a happy wastrel. Ryan smiled and said, Rachel, you have a good aunt. I thought about it. Yes, she is a good aunt. She made me realize that living as an individual, one must understand what they want. Then spare no effort, use every means to achieve it. Climbing onto Ryan, my eyes brightened. I think I can get you, that's my talent. Ryan chuckled. Rachel, I like your bold and straightforward nature. The rest of the conversation disappeared into the wind. Ryan leaned down and kissed me. The temperature around us rose progressively. I happily swayed my head. Ryan, you're my sun, moon, and stars. I muttered, I've never said this to anyone else, from now on, only to you. Ryan softly murmured, okay, only say it to me.